thanks for sitting through that. So this is Dan, who wasn't here right at the beginning, but he did all the drone shots and special effects, which really added a lot of layers to this. But this was a real fun project. The news channel today asked me why I chose this topic a year ago, and the reason why is because there's just such a wealth of information and enthusiasm that pretty much any creative choice I did, I was going to look good because the subject matter was just more interesting than anything I think we could make it into. So that was really a delight in the last year or so in these stages to sort of tap into that primal aspect of telling stories, around a ghost fire, ghost stories and whatnot. It was just a lot of fun. But as I said earlier, I wanted to open up to Mr. Kramer. We had some questions last time, and what we do is just go through the questions, answer them, and open it up to you guys in terms of any anecdotes or things along those lines. So I'll let Mr. Kramer.
I don't know why I had to come out and do this. I thought there's any number of you people that could do it just as well as I. You all live around here, you've all been up there and seen the thing, but I'm gonna come up here and do it. I'm gonna sit right next to the cookies. I can't remember the show hands. How many people, how many of you people knew something about this phenomenon before you walked into this room?
I've known all my life.
Okay. Anybody, and you heard the basic stories, she said she was going to come back and haunt him, blah, 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 this type of thing. And you're not supposed to mess with the stone. Those are a couple of things that I've pretty consistently heard. Have any of you heard any other variants of the story? Ever known anybody that had anything bad happen to them for going up there and throwing a beer can at the...
Well, I'll add to that. We had a fender bender when we were shooting, so.
Yeah. My vehicle, by the way.
I do want to, when I was in high school and college, I worked up there in the summertime, maintenance, lawns. Amazing the number of people that came up from all over, that just wanted to see it, and asked about it and talked about it. And, from all over the United States and, different, countries, and it's amazing that, and I've heard it about the, I didn't know, I guess, that it's been replaced. They claim it's been replaced, but, who knows? That's a big stone. That's a lot of, even back then for the money.
Yeah, really.
So.
Really. Well, and I'm glad you mentioned that thing about the crowds coming to see it, because I got a little something to say about that in a minute. I have got stuck. See, Chris gets to tell all the really cool stories and stuff like that. And I have to do the nasty stuff. I have to tell you the facts. You already know one nasty fact, which is that Mr. Gillette died first. So that pretty much deep sixes most of the stories I ever heard about it. I think it's also interesting to know that the Gillettes are not the only people that are buried in that little plot. That huge stone that has the mark on it is not actually a tombstone in the sense that it has a burial under it. It's sort of a big fancy marker for a family plot. And the individual tombstones are arrayed all around it. There are 7 burials up there altogether. And you saw the side of the stone that says Gillette on it. You go around to the other side and there's another name. Bishop. And as a matter of fact, there's only one bishop buried up there. But there are a grand total of 7 burials in addition to the 2 to Frank and Matilda Gillette. There's Caleb Bishop, Henry and Eliza Brewer, Sarah Shove, and Josephine Graves. Josephine Graves was the last burial. She was Frank and Matilda's daughter. She died in 1965. The other burials are all much older. In fact, they predate the Frank and Matilda Gillette. It is known who all these people are. They're all related, either by blood or by marriage. But I can't tell you right offhand what the relationship is. But I always thought it was interesting that every single story I ever heard about this phenomenon was claimed to involve the poor Gillettes. Nobody picked on Henry and Eliza Brewer, you know? Nobody went around to the other side of the stone and said, well, what about these bishops? Maybe it's a bishop that's haunted, you know? Which kind of makes you wonder, you know, maybe where there's smoke, there's fire type thing. I don't know. But I just wanted to point out there's a little more going on up there than just old Frank and Matilda. More of this nasty documentation. As was mentioned in the film, there is no documentation whatever to support the allegations that there was any difficulty between those people during their life. In fact, I wish I had written this down, because I'm sure all the people I heard from are dead now. But many, many years ago, I remember hearing from some people who had known Frank and Matilda Gillette in life. And they said, oh, it was just horrible, these stories going on. They said there was absolutely no truth to it, and they were just a lovely couple and got along just fine. Which would kind of make you think that there's something here on the stone, we got to make up something that goes along with it. Here's a couple names, this looks good, da-da-da. You know, this is how folklore happens. We don't know when the big stone was put there. I will tell you this, I made a point of studying this today when we were up there earlier this afternoon. All the stones match. Now I suppose they could have still been carved at different times. Well, I'm sure they were, because the people died at different times. I would guess that the big stone, the one with the mark on it, was probably the first, or one of the first, that was put there, which would mean that it would date back as far as 1895, which is when the first burial was. But nonetheless, we don't know exactly when the stone was put there, so we don't know how long it's been out there, exposed to the weather, all that kind of thing. You've heard about the refinishing, replacement type thing. As Ron pointed out, there's no documentation for that either. And I always thought it was interesting that the claim is that it was done 3 times. You know, it's the magic 3 that always occurs in fairy tales. There's always 3 rings, 3 wishes, and things like that. Don't know, you know, but I just want to, you know, this is my job. There was some mention of the, that I had made the acquaintance of one of the previous cemetery superintendents. The reason I mentioned that was that that gentleman, and this is now, oh, jeepers, terrifying, 20 years or more ago, he told me that his predecessor told him that that man's predecessor had made up the story out of thin air, because he kept getting inquiries about what was that thing on the side of that big stone. And so he thought, well, he'd make up a good story to go along with it, which makes way too much sense to me. Since then, since Chris did the film, my long-suffering, hard-working ex-co-worker here at the library, Joni Hand, who now has to work with Alex, and I'm sure that's a vast improvement. She has discovered the proverbial smoking gun. She found an article that appeared in the Chronicle Express in August of 1936, and I wish I had a copy of it here that I could read to you, but I don't. But it's a little blurb that says that the man who was then the superintendent of Lakeview Cemetery, August 1936, was being plagued with crowds of people coming up there and saying, where's this stone with the spirit on it and stuff, and who is it, and why is she there, and all this kind of thing. And there's another thing. It's always presumed to be a woman. Anyhow, so now we have documentary proof in the form of that newspaper article that the mark was on the stone by August 1936. If we figure that the stone was not put there before 1895, when the first burial was, that means that it had been there a max of about 40 years. I don't know how long it takes for something like that to form, but the fact that the article appeared then and not any point prior to that makes me think that August 1936 or thereabouts may have been the time when the mark became obvious enough that it was starting to draw people's attention. And if you could see this article, the guy was genuinely bothered. He said there's people coming in here in droves and they're all looking for that one same thing, just like when you worked up there. Here's another interesting little factoid. That article was in August 1936. The poor, much maligned Matilda Gillette was still alive. She, in fact, died in December 1936. And I would hope ever so much that she was spared any awareness of these nasty stories that must have been going around. Although maybe at that point the stories hadn't been made up yet. But people had definitely seen the thing on the stone. And so they're, you know, the wheels are turning, they're trying to figure out, well, what could the reason be? Well, you know, imagine her horror if she had found out that there were stories going around that claimed that she was haunting her husband because he hated her, or he was unfaithful, or some kind of hogwash like that, when as a matter of fact, she wasn't even in a position to start haunting yet because she wasn't dead. We talked about this earlier. I think that this kind of thing is a good deal of the reason why this particular phenomenon is as popular, endlessly popular. It's been known now for at least 80 years. Is as popular as it is. There's a lot of weird stuff going on in Yates County, and some of you people know about it. I mean, not in politics and stuff. We wouldn't have any of that. But, I mean, you got the earthworks out in Friend, you got the stone construction up on top of the bluff, there's another earthworks over along the Bath Road. There's strange tombstones with markings on them. Believe me, this is not the only one. It goes on and on. There's ghost stories. This one is without a doubt, I want to say the most popular, in the sense that everybody seems to know something about it, or at least know that it's out there. I think the reason for that is that its origin is just about within living memory. There's people walking around every day that were born before 1936. And what are humans bound to do? Humans are bound to try to explain stuff, you know? And so there's that thing that's on the stone. It's there without a doubt. Well, what do we have to do? We got to come up with a reason for it. And, you know, being pretty much natural storytellers, we come up with a really interesting story to explain it. The story doesn't have the slightest basis in reality, but it's our story. And it's a thing that either we made up or people like us made up. And so we kind of own it, you know? And this is a thing that is really accessible. You know, it's not the wreck of the Titanic. It's not some volcanic explosion in the South Pacific. It's right there. It's right up the street. We can go right up there and look at it. You can put your hand right on it, which I wouldn't recommend. You don't know that she wouldn't reach out and drag you inside the stone. I never known it to happen, but you can't say it would. See what I mean? I think, you know, we feel like we kind of have ownership of the thing, and I think that's what makes it so popular. And we were talking earlier about, the fella asked us, well, did we think it was going to stay this popular? I think it will, because I think people will always have that kind of interest, that kind of ownership, you know, it's not just some ghost somewhere, it's a local ghost, it's our very own ghost. Yeah,
I have a question. If it's on the inside coming out, have there been other places where something like this has happened from the inside?
I thought you'd never. I don't know how clear this picture is, I'll pass it around so y'all can look at it. This is a color photograph of a tombstone that is right in the same neighborhood of the Lady in Granite. And if you want to see it for yourself, if you go up and you look at the Lady in Granite stone, if you look her right in the eye, which you shouldn't ought to do for very long, and then you turn right around 180 degrees, okay? This stone is, you'll be facing down the hill toward Elm Street, okay? This stone is several rows of stones down below the little lane that the Lady in Granite stone is along. And it's a little bit closer to town, but you can easily see it from a vantage point in front of the Lady in Granite. Now, I don't know how clear that photograph is, but we were just up there today and I went over and had a look at it. I'll tell you what, that is a lot clearer image of a woodchuck than she is of a lady. Why is it there? I have no idea. I am ashamed to admit I have never yet gone to the trouble to even go over there and look at the name on the stone, or if I did, I've forgotten it. I don't know why there should be a woodchuck on there, but there is. And there are.
And it's behind the finish.
It is under the finish. As with this thing, if you walk over to this stone and you shut your eyes and you run your fingers over the area where the image is, you cannot feel it. It's underneath the finish. And I noticed there are little pock marks all over the stone, and I thought, well, you know, that must be from kids throwing pop bottles and stones at it and stuff, but it's not. There's little pock marks all over this, all four sides of the stone. I doubt it was like that when it was put there. I again, you know, trying to be a little bit factual here, I would guess that it may be another effect of weathering, which I think is what produced the lady's image and also what produced the woodchuck there. But there are others. There's a lot of them out there. This just happens to be the one that obviously attracts the most attention.
Because I've asked, you know, a guy from Jack Nielsen before, he lives in Granite, and he you know, it says it's pigmentation, you know, over the years it just wears, but he doesn't buy that it was ever replaced because of the monetary even back then.
Yeah, you know, if it were, he probably would have known about it.
Yeah.
But there it is. I mean, it makes a good
No.
story.
Oh, yeah.
You make 3 attempts to get rid of it. No, she keeps coming back. Yeah.
Has anybody asked the Moravik boy about the geological part of it?
He's a geologist,
Oh,
worked for Granite, well
uh-huh. I haven't. I don't know that anybody has. Mr. Nielsen told me way back when that it was simply an effect of exposure to sun and weather. You know, these stones come out of a quarry, and of course they're all in one great big mass, and then you cut them to size, and you may cut through an area where there's a defect. Obviously, the defect was not visible when the stone was put there, but he said it was far from unheard of for this kind of thing to happen. Again, what distinguishes this thing is not that it's there, but it's quite so large and it looks an awful lot like a lady who's come back to haunt somebody.
Okay.
I really liked what you mentioned the other day about what will happen as it continues to kind of fill in. You want to
Oh, yeah.
facet?
My introduction to this thing was back in the 50s. I was maybe like 8 years old or something, and kids talked about it, and of course you had to go and look, so I looked at it. And I remember being told then 2 things. One, that it was more visible under an overcast sky or, of course, at night. It's always more visible. The other thing I was told that I don't think I've heard anybody else mention was that as the years go by, the image is filling in more and more. And when she finally fills in 100%, she's going to jump down off the stone and lay waste to Penny. But if you go out and look at her, if she's only progressed that much in 60 years, so we got ways to go.
The other thing I thought was really interesting from Tuesday, again, just to reiterate your point, was all the ghost stories in the area, like George Ball, Hine, Cooper College. I briefly worked over there at Campus Safety, and there were some sightings from the officers there, but never anything that was foreboding, like you say, in terms of he's going to come after you, or he's trying to kick you out of your dorm or the hall, Ball Hall, or anything like that. So that was interesting. We were talking a little bit Tuesday about maybe sort of this sociological, psychological, anthropological reasons behind seeing a woman's face and why is it threatening. And a lot of people have reason that when these sort of things happen that were prior to the 1960s or 70s, it's because a woman would have to metaphorically make a statement without actually saying that she's upset about something, and that was sort of lingering in our psyche, for our pop culture, that that's the only way that someone could get attention as a woman in that time period, which I thought was very interesting. I think I read over that once in one of the Crooked Lake reviews from David Robinson, who's no longer with us anymore, but I always thought that was very interesting, that, as you say, we automatically assume it's a woman, she is upset about something, a George Ball or, a ghost, lingering on the bluff is not taken with the same sort of threatening nature.
Does anybody know what the ghost hunters were doing in town like 3 weeks ago?
That's a good question, because I just found out that there's been a seance up there since the spring at the actual Granite site. I don't know if that's the team that went up there, and I don't know if you're referring to the local Yates County ones.
No, TAPS, the ones that's on TV.
Okay.
I heard that they were interested in the Samson Theater.
Oh,
I
maybe
don't know if
so.
that's true, that's what I heard.
Maybe so, okay.
And there was a seance.
There was,
At
yes.
the lady at
Apparently sometime in the spring, I don't know the results of that, if they're able to bring Frank and Matilda back together or what it was. But the other thing too, I think was kind of interesting, and I talked about this a little bit this afternoon with the news station, is that, also not just being a ghost story, it's really a love story if you believe in the folklore that, this kind of betrayal is considered a betrayal even after someone dies, that their love should be so committed that I'm not going to go and find anyone else. That that sort of taps into that aspect of Romeo and Juliet, and sort of love and so strong that I'm going to be willing to die or haunt for it or to keep it or revenge.
Love is so strong to make you miserable.
Yeah. But the other thing too that I think is really interesting is if this is just word of mouth. I mean, just think about how bad gossip is, especially in the age of social media. About when you post something and you really can't really retort what you're saying, and then you look back to 80 years ago. I mean, Matilda Gillette or her daughter. I mean, there's no way that they could really refute this sort of statement. And it's sort of like the Salem witch trials. It just grows, and it's just like, my goodness, how do I refute something that I have no understanding of why I'm being accused of this? So there's a lot of elements to this story, to this mythology, really, and I think that that's what it is. It's a bunch of stories coming together to make a mythology that is just really interesting, and it really, I think, has a microcosm on the area here, not just Yates County, but the Finger Lakes in general. And we didn't talk about this in the film, but in the spring, we were just mentioning all of the sort of spiritual cult sort of practices in upstate New York. The Ouija board was, I think, invented in Newark, just up the road. And Rod Serling is just down the road. And we have the torture tree in Collierville, New York. Apparently it's haunted. We worked on a project there. And we could just name them off and off and off. And even just here in Yates County, too, like the Isles of Pines we're talking about, and some other very interesting sort of phenomenon and events. So it's just a really wealth of information that really makes you think about ourselves, really, about how we've changed, how we haven't changed since this sort of folklore has grown. So. Any other questions?
You did a great job on that. I enjoyed that so much.
Well, I need to thank these two very much in particular
Yes,
for
I love your stories.
yes, bringing that to life. The library for hosting this event 3 times now. The cast, we had some really talented actors that came on.
I love the drone effect.
Yeah.
Nice
Yeah.
job. I don't know how you do that with power lines and
Yeah,
trees.
you
That,
gotta find a clear spot to take off straight up and then make sure you're above everything when you're flying around.
Has anyone seen a drone? Maybe not everyone's seen the Lady Granite. Has anyone seen a drone fly? It's just amazing. They go omnidirectional, right? They just basically
Oh yeah, I mean, any direction in space you wanna go.
Yeah.
I didn't see the list of characters, but were they Penyan people?
The reenactments of Frank and Matilda were from Ithaca. I worked on a play with them about a year and a half ago. But the kids were actually Penyan natives.
and you have to throw cans.
Yeah, so we didn't actually hit the tombstone. We just sort of threw it off to the side.
Yeah. We just did, I mean, when did we shoot that? That was like 3 weeks ago?
October 3rd, yeah.
So we just shot that with the kids, and they heard the stories, but not the extent. They were only a little familiar, and so we had to fill them in, and then once we filled them in, they started getting nervous about it. I was like, okay, now you need to go up and pick the stone. He's like, you want me to what now? After you just told me that, so, yeah, we had to
They'll
fake
never
everything.
forget it.
Yeah, you've kind of recharged
That's right.
the legend. It's
Yeah.
passed on ever more energetically.
I took my son and his friends over there after a Little League game. How old is the kid when they played Little League?
7.
7?
7 to 10.
I did that. Well, I dragged him all over there, you know. And expounded on the story, frightened him half to death.
But they'll tell their kids.
They've never forgotten it, they've never forgotten me. If they see me after years, oh my God, remember when you dragged us into the cemetery and scared the hell out of us?
I think they had a lot of questions too about who lives in the house right in front of the cemetery, and we didn't have an answer to that, but
Oh, that was the caretaker's house, wasn't it?
that's what I thought, but yeah.
And different people, I can tell you who's
Originally.
lived there over the years.
Originally, now it's
Not
a
off the
Oh.
top of my head.
Village runs it.
But the caretaker always lived there.
Yeah.
It's like taking over the hotel, The
Right.
Shining for the winter.
My sister and her husband lived there they rented from the village. When I was a kid, we'd go there, and spend the night, you got the stones right out,
Oh, I think.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, they lived there for probably 10 years, they rented from the village.
The news program broadcast of this event will be online on WTM.com.
We're going to share the link on our Facebook page,
Right.
so you should like the library's Facebook page.
I do have some copies for sale if anyone would ever want to purchase one. It's $5, the DVD. It's been a real pleasure to present this to the town of Village of Penyan. Any other questions for we adjourn for the Halloween season?
I'm friends with a girl that grew up with the Isle of Pines. Would you like to meet her? She's got awesome stories.
Sure. I don't know much. I'd love to learn more about that.
Oh, it's very spooky and mysterious.
Yeah.
And she just came back here from California.
Did she bring, what'd she say, the Isles of what?
Isles of Pines?
Oh.
It's on the wing there.
Wait, yeah.
Yeah, there was a couple murdered there in that guardhouse, or the caretaker's house that's right out by the road now. The original mansion sat way back in, and there was an aisle of pine trees that went back to the mansion. The mansion burned down years and years and years ago. But with recent history, I'm gonna say it was probably in the late 60s when that couple was murdered. Yeah.
And a horse and rider still right across that property.
Yeah, okay.
What was the earthworks?
Yeah.
What was the earthworks you mentioned near the back road?
as I understand it, the earthwork along the Bath Road, it's just south of the intersection with Second Milo Road on the east side of the road. It sits back in the road a little bit. But I've heard that it has pretty much been destroyed now. But it was there, you know, within our lifetime. There's a very well preserved one out in Friend. If you go out Guyno the road to the Isaac Walton League, and you turn, go up the hill, and you go around, you loop down into the little hamlet there. There's a church there. Just immediately west of the church is a pre-Columbian earthwork. Everybody calls the Senecas Native Americans. Well, okay, I guess they were native in the sense they were born here. But there were at least 2 civilizations here before the Senecas came. That earthwork was built by one of them. And it's intact. It has trees growing all over it, so it's a
So
little.
what's an earthwork?
What's an earthwork? Well, people call them forts. I don't think they were
okay.
really. It's a ring of ground that's been, like the dirt's been piled up, raised up, and it probably once was somewhat higher than it is now. I think today it's probably about like that, but we're talking easily a couple thousand years. It's just astounding to me that there should be a thing like that, you know, right down the street from where we live. I've heard stories about things that were unearthed from inside it. Don't know if they're true, but, you know, as with this, makes a good story. And then you know about the stone construction up on top of the bluff? That's real weird. Unfortunately, that seems to have been entirely destroyed. It was here when the white settlers came here, and it was still in pretty good condition into the 1880s anyway, when there was, fortunately, a rather detailed survey made of it. And
A Stonehenge, you mean?
Stonehenge.
it's not a henge in the sense that the stones were standing up. I don't know what the thing is. They have the map here at the library. So you come in and look at the map, and if you can figure out what it is, you tell me.
Stonework.
Alien landing zone, no
Stone.
doubt.
Yeah, it could be. As a matter of fact, the surveyor who recorded it back in the 80s, he called them graded ways. You've seen a raised bed garden. It looked for all the world like that, except it was entirely faced with stone. There were stones along each side of these long, I don't know what you'd call them, you know, long, low walls, and then stones laid along the top as if it was like a raised sidewalk. The stones were all cut to size. They're all a uniform dimension. In fact, a lot of them disappeared into the foundations of houses up there. I remember reading somewhere, and it must have been in here, somewhere in the local history collection, at some point, maybe it was when the survey was done in the 1880s, they discovered that what appeared to be the remains of a rather large wooden structure that had burned. How do they know this stuff? I don't know. I'm not an archaeologist. But in the ruins, they found corn kernels that had somehow survived the fire, and I don't know how they've been stored so they didn't deteriorate. But they rescued some of the kernels and analyzed them, and they said they were of a variety that does not grow any farther north than Florida. And so the speculation is that either they were brought here by whoever it was that built the stone construction, or maybe it was a trade type thing, you know. But why you would trade for corn when you can grow corn here is a mystery to me. But the thing is utterly without any precedent. Earthworks are known. There aren't many of them around here. They're mostly out in Ohio and down the Missouri Valley. This stone thing, I have never heard of another one like it, and neither has the state education department.
Is
So-
it designed as Celtic, basically, in origin, or like in comparison?
I don't think anyone knows. No, it's just this, I don't know, it covered several acres when it was all there. And it's just these huge stone slabs that are laid in such a way as to, they look like low ramparts or raised sidewalks or something like that. Bizarre. No apparent use for them. I
Was
mean,
it one
wasn't-
long stretch or?
No, it went round and around. You come in and get Alex to get that map out and show you, and then you'll know as much as I do.
This is actually a picture of stonework, ancient stonework I took
Uh-huh.
in Ireland, actually.
Okay. How, do you know how big that is?
The guy said it was at least a mile wide.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was pretty big. I took this from a pretty far distance, so
So if that's a mile wide, then those walls are pretty tall.
yeah, they were pretty big. This is actually, he said this one was one of the more better standing ones we saw.
Uh-huh.
There were ones we saw that were like kind of like really bad shape and stuff, but this was one of the better ones, he said,
Okay.
around there.
I don't think this one was ever that tall, but, you know, we're talking about, who knows what passage of time? No one knows who built the thing, so you don't know how long it has stood there, how much it might have weathered.
Where'd you say that was, John?
It was, it ain't there anymore.
Yeah.
I could show you on a map, if you go out Skyline Drive to the south, there's a road that goes along, that goes off to the west. And if I heard the name of the road or saw it on the map, I'd know it. And it stood right in that intersection.
Like Vernon Road or one of those?
Is that where Pepper Road comes up there, John?
I think it's south of that. I could find it on the map. It's quite a ways out.
I know, there was a fairly good-sized Indian burial ground or whatever it was right near the intersection of Pepper Road and Skyline Drive that the Monroe, the Rochester Museum of History excavated